this.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your social host, Madelyn.
I'm your other host, Emma.
You're supposed to say connected.
That's a lie, though.
You're connected to me via Zoom.
I guess so. I suppose so.
And this week, it's more dangerous and yet somehow safer to podcast alone than ever before.
Indeed.
You've tuned in. Thanks for joining us for one of our side quest episodes, where this time it's my turn to pick what we're going to talk about for the next length of this podcast.
It sure is.
And so at first I toyed around this week with some ideas about best games to play in quarantine, or I even noodled around with the idea of try to recreate your daily routine, your normal daily routine with video games. What video game replaces getting up with your alarm in the morning, and what video game is taking a shower. That can't all be The Sims, I guess. But ultimately decided that was going to be too difficult, and instead picked the very, very narrow and not at all a lot to talk about it category of games and social connection. Something that felt even more relevant for a number of reasons in this week that we find ourselves in right here at the end of March 2020.
Sure does.
So, this would always have been, after the game was delayed, this would always have been a time where games and social connection would have been an interesting topic, because with the release of Animal Crossing last Friday, there's been more conversation in my social feeds than ever before, really, and not just the Talk This Twitter, but in my own personal social media, about meeting up with friends and going to visit each other's islands and trading fruit and all of that good stuff. But of course, as we all know, games and social connections become all the more urgent and topical over the past couple of weeks as we've all retreated to our homes to avoid catching and spreading coronavirus. So I figured if there was a time to talk about how games can and can't connect us, this would be it.
It's true.
I was talking specifically about Animal Crossing, but even in my social feeds in general, it's a lot of it is Animal Crossing, a lot of it is people talking specifically about Animal Crossing and their experience with Animal Crossing and people sharing their friend codes, but I've seen more appeals for people to play, Smash online or Overwatch or those kinds of things as well, so it's not just Animal Crossing specific.
Right.
Have you seen more of that too?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. My feeds are pretty gaming-centric now.
Fair enough.
So I don't really check Facebook where I have, actual friends, So it's always sort of been like that for me. So I don't know if I've certainly noticed an uptick in Animal Crossing, but that's just partially because it exists now.
Fair enough. Animal Crossing specifically has had a lot of kind of memeable and fun ways in which people are recreating actual in-person social experiences. So you've probably seen, if you're into this kind of thing at all, pictures online of people who are hosting their weddings that they canceled in Animal Crossing, or throwing birthday parties for kids who couldn't have kids over, or I just saw people doing graduation except they didn't have diplomas, so they had to hold up a fish to take their graduation photos. So I just saw that. And I was also talking to someone the other day and found out that apparently there's a group of NYU students who are recreating the campus in Minecraft. Perfectly to scale, doing all the calculations and everything.
I hope they're architecture students or something.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I was the architecture students seem to be making the most of this time. But it's not just, what I want to talk about today is not just funny ways that you can take pictures of things that look like real-life experiences that you're not able to have, because we could talk about that a lot. I'm sure I could come up with a lot of good ideas for that. But I really wanted to talk about how games, specifically in the act of playing games, can allow you to build and develop friendships, and how much it can replace or not replace in-person social interaction, and not just in the kind of silly meme way of like, ha ha ha, like I'm having a wedding, of genuine connection.
That's not silly.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it silly.
That story was super sweet.
Oh, it is very sweet. I'm sorry, I did not mean to make fun of that story. That story was very sweet. I just mean to say I don't want to talk about just how I can create replicas of in-person events in games, basically. I want to talk about more broadly than that, how games facilitate connection.
Sure. So what's the first topic?
You betcha. Sorry, I was trying to give you some space to jump in if you wanted, trying to be a, receptive
Well, you were just
conversation partner.
You were introducing what you wanted to talk about, so I was waiting for you to get through that.
I was doing some active listening there.
Okay.
So I guess what I'll start by talking about a little bit is I read a lot of studies about games and connection that I'd love to share a little bit with you, the listeners, right now. Believe it or not, there have been not overwhelming amounts of studies, because there's not overwhelming amounts of anything studied in video games, to be honest. But there have been a fair number of studies over the past 15 years or so about how games interact with friendships and what those friendships are, and how people come to games for friendships and what have you. So let me give a few highlights. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about here comes from a Pew Research study from I think the surveys was given in 2014 and 2015, that talks a lot about teen gaming behaviors and what those people come to. It's really cool. It's really interesting. They have a really nice breakdown of the study, and this video game friendships thing is only one piece of this other bigger study that they talk about over the course of several chapters online, all available. Really interesting read. Lots of charts and graphs, so very readable if you don't want to read like a even quasi-scientific paper. Highly recommend it. But it surprised me in this study because I don't feel like I often play games this way because I avoid online interaction, which maybe has a reason for it, and I will get to that later in the episode. But a lot of teens come to games like with the idea of making friends. Or with friendship being a big part of why they play games. So in this study, more than half of the teens surveyed had made new friends online, which shocked me.
Yeah. Thinking of like 2014, 2015, like, I guess I don't know really. I was not in middle school then. I was like, that's so long ago. I'm like, wait, no. That's like high school graduation, so never mind. But I remember when we were younger, like a lot of like the online experiences was like, Club Penguin and that sort of stuff.
That's true.
Right? Like pretty, like not even things where you necessarily have to like get the subscription in order to play or whatever. Feels like there were more popular like online social spaces, even more than just like you have to be playing,
That's true. Different kinds of games that were really built around just talking to people, for sure. It's interesting. I was also reading a lot about how developers of these, things like Fortnite and like Overwatch and like Division and all that stuff are really gearing it towards creating these kinds of spaces for friendship and interaction. Whether that's through lobbies or through emotes or whatever. Which was also interesting to me. I just don't think of those games. I don't know. Because I'm not a regular player of those kinds of games, I don't think of them as like social networks.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say Overwatch is a social network, but if you're making a live service game, it has to be something community-based. Like, even if it's not in the game, like, there is a group that plays it, and you're part of that group, and that's the appeal of it, and that's what it's designed for. And you can take that in an optimistic way or a cynical way,
I mean, I'm basically just revealing that I am dumb and had not thought about this, because it just had not crossed my mind that was such an important part of designing these games.
Right. It's because you want people to be playing all the time. You don't want them to just, like, hop on and hop off, like, when there's a new event going on, right? Sure. And you can't always be churning out the new content to keep people around, so the community is what keeps people around.
Fair enough. Well, I know you just said that these games are not social networks, but apparently nearly a quarter, 23%, of teens report that they would give a new friend their gaming handle as contact information.
Yeah, that part is social media, sure.
I know. I wasn't contradicting you. That also struck me as weird. I don't think I've ever, other than the post I just made, being like, here's my Switch handle on an existing social media page, right? Other than that, I don't think I've ever been like, here's my gaming handle, look me up, to anyone.
It's just because we never had online.
It's true. It's a whole new world for me now that I have Switch Online and PlayStation Online. It's a whole new world. I'm learning so much. Let's see. Other things. I'm going to talk about gender dynamics in this later, because there's a lot to talk about there. But a lot of teens reported that online gaming builds stronger connections to friends. So fully 78% of these teenagers said they were more connected to friends they play games with who you already know. 38% a lot, 40% a little. I'm trying to do addition here on the fly from this graph, and it's not going super great. 82% said that playing online games made them more relaxed and happy. About just a little over 50% said that the teens who play online with others feel connected to people they play games with but aren't friends with yet. And only 30% said that gaming made them more angry and frustrated. Some of those people are liars, probably. But
I'm sure they mean on a consistent basis.
Fair enough. There are some interesting family income dynamics at play as well, in terms of the kinds of people who feel more connected and who feel relaxed and happy while playing games. Weirdly, it kind of goes in the opposite way of the way I was expecting. I don't know why I was expecting the wealthier teens to have, like, more positive gaming experiences. But apparently teens from the lowest income homes, that is, families making less than $30,000, 64% of those teens say that they feel connected to others who aren't friends when they play online, compared to just half from families that make more than that. And also teens from families earning less than $50,000, 90% of them feel relaxed and happy when they play, as opposed to 78% from greater than $50,000. Which I thought was kind of interesting and a little bit surprising. Maybe not. In the escapism
I don't know.
sense.
I mean, I can think of maybe a few reasons in terms of hypothesizing. Like, one being, like, if you're in that income bracket, you probably have less time and money for entertainment. So if you're spending that time and entertainment, that time and money on games, that might be your one form of entertainment that you're doing, right? Whereas if you're richer, you can go to movies and, you know, take exotic trips or whatever.
Not anymore.
That's just a hypothesis, though. Or just, you know, if you're more worried about things, then maybe your escapism is more satisfying.
A lot of possibilities there, but it wasn't a data point. For whatever reason, I thought it was going to go the other way, and so I thought I would share it because it was interesting. There's other research that talks about like kind of friendship and that sort of thing across different age groups. There's a good one. I'll save the German study. I have so many studies, everybody. I'm just like overwhelmed with studies.
Madelyn loves studies.
I try to make these...
I love to make things up on the fly.
I try to make these side quests that I come to, I feel like insecure, so I try to come to it with a bunch of data, so it's not just like, this is what I think. Yeah. So, Emma, I'll give you topic options at this point.
Okay.
We could talk about gaming as a space for folks that might feel uncomfortable with other social interaction. We can talk about gaming space for girls versus boys. Pick from those two.
Mal, you're the discussion leader.
Cool. Let's talk about creating spaces that are more accessible before we talk about things that are less accessible.
Okay.
So I'll lead with a study, because apparently that's what I'm doing today. So there's a kind of cool German study that drew from a representative sample of German game players, so people of all ages. The results indicated that emotionally sensitive players, which is sort of their shorthand for folks that are shy, basically, they actually build more friendships online than more extroverted or less shy players, because it allows them, theoretically, to overcome traditional social difficulties and generate new friendships, as well as strengthen old ones.
Yeah, makes sense.
And of course, gaming, I also read a great article on the Washington Post about how gaming can help people with disabilities sort of be able to interact in ways that would otherwise be difficult for them in online spaces.
Yeah. I mean, if it's hard to leave your house, then, you know, whether for a disability reason or pandemic reason.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, it makes sense that, you know, that's a space where you can get your socialization.
But overall, what seems to be the kind of potentially controversial thing about gaming relationships is that people, a lot of the kind of, like, the other side of the coin in these articles was, you know, are these relationships, like, are they really doing the work that in-person friendships do? Like, is a friendship that is mostly built online and mostly based online, like, are you missing something fundamental or important in what friendships do for us as people by being mostly online and not really having face-to-face contact?
Oh man, we learned something about this in Intro to Communication Studies, but I cannot remember which way it was. So we learned about, like, online versus face-to-face relationships, and there is... I think it was that online relationships got closer faster.
So that tracks with something that I was reading in Men's Health about men specifically. So loneliness, as you may now be experiencing in these pandemic times, is something that is actually in many ways kind of a public health threat. Because of the emotional stress that it puts on you, apparently, like, there have been some, like, the Surgeon General has been like, oh, it's like a public health threat, former Surgeon General, as, like, it actually declared it a public health epidemic, but that feels in poor taste in 2020. But also, researchers at the Health Resources and Service Administration found that social isolation had similar effects or similar morbidities, I guess, to smoking 15 cigarettes every day. So it seems to me like if games are providing an outlet for those sorts of feelings or making people feel less lonely, overall that's a good thing. And in this men's health piece, they were talking about how men specifically are really bad at friendship. Kinda. This is generalizing, but in the kind of socialization of masculinity in our culture, there's this, like, 80s study that feels like it's gotta be super dumb and super dated, but there's this, like, 80s study, I think from UCLA, that, you know, women's friendships are predominantly based on, like, socialization and talking, and men's friendships are based on, like, doing activities together.
Oh yeah, we definitely learned that too in way back in 2015 Intro to Communication Studies.
Yeah. Which, you know, like, let's not get into... I feels like that there's just a lot of dynamics at play there. But culturally and, like, how we're socialized, in many ways that plays out, right? Men are not encouraged to share their feelings or talk about emotionally sensitive issues, right? They're supposed to bottle it up. Right. And this men's health piece was talking about how in kind of online spaces, because you create a little bit of a distance, and because you're kind of doing something and you have time to chat while things are loading or whatever, that it actually oftentimes encourages men who've been socialized to, hold it all in, to actually be able to open up and share a little bit more about their lives. And also to create new friendships in a way that's difficult to do as you get older. But then also on the flip side of the coin, some of these men that they interviewed were like, well, now that I have these online friends, I actually, I meet up with people in person less.
Interesting. I mean, the appeal of online, right, is that there's a wall there.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily know who you are. And even with, gender stuff, you don't necessarily know that the male avatar is a man and the female avatar is a female. And that doesn't even have to do with, people expressing their actual identity through online play. Sometimes people are just like, I want to play as a girl because the design's nicer. Or something to that effect. Or I want to watch a girl run around. Or I want to watch a boy run around. It just all depends on how you play. But then there's sort of a space in online where you're not necessarily sure who the person you're talking to is, what their background is, or even necessarily what their gender or race or income level is, right? So there's just a big wall in which you can then just talk to somebody. They're just judging you on your skills with a Z.
Several Z's. But even they were talking about even with folks that are, not just, I guess, me randomly venting on voice chat to my, Apex trio. Can you imagine if I was like, I need to talk? But they were talking even about people who have these kind of ongoing relationships online that are in guilds or that play any of these, online battle royale games together regularly. But even in those cases where they know more about each other, they aren't total randos, that people were feeling more comfortable, at least anecdotally, with sharing than if they were having to talk to somebody face to face.
Sure. I mean, there's still the wall, right? You can know something about someone and you're not seeing them, though. You're seeing their avatar.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, another one of the kind of issues with these kinds of friendships is there's still a lot of stigma around having met people online at least in this world, or having people who are your gaming friends. Mm-hmm. Even though, how do you make friends with people normally, right? You have shared hobbies or you have a shared space that you go to, and how is this any different except that it's virtual? And I imagine that will change. I mean, certainly online dating no longer has really any kind of a stigma, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine as more and more people make these kinds of friendships online, which apparently the majority of teenagers are doing, it will become something that people are less embarrassed about.
Yeah. My friend XX_gamer 420 blaze it _
You should still 69. Be embarrassed about that friendship. I don't think we need to go that far. You can still be embarrassed about that one.
Just advice to all the teenagers out there, you can change your handle now on certain sites, but think about it before you put it in. That's all.
Yes, make sure you pick something that isn't going to be embarrassing to you at 35.
Yes.
You might never get to change. So, shall we talk about online gaming and girls?
You're a discussion leader, Madelyn. You're the leader of the discussion. You've got the flag.
I meant that as more of a rhetorical question, but you took it literally. That's fine.
I'm boosting you up. I'm lifting you to your prescribed role.
So, as you may have suspected, if you've ever engaged in online voice chat or any kind of online gaming communication, girls in general, at least according to this 2015 Pew study, have a less positive experience with online communication than boys. Boys, according to the study, and this probably is still true, although I imagine that these numbers get more and more even every year. But boys do play online games more often with online-only friends. So if you compare the online gamers, like the girls and boys who play games, to people who at all, or who play online games at all, so like 90% of boys and 85% of girls play with friends they know in person. Mm-hmm. Fine. Pretty close, right? But if you compare it to the amount of boys and the amount of girls who play with friends that they only know online, that's 59% of boys, but only 40% of girls. So you can see this gap, and there's a similar gap between what they call people that you play games with, but that you wouldn't consider friends. Mm-hmm. There's a similar, like, about a 20-point gap between boys and girls. So we see this kind of roadblock where girls are not getting the same kind of, or at least are not seeking out the same kind of online-only friendships that boys of their age are. And that might be because, not surprisingly, in network games, 71% of boys that play these online games use voice chat, compared to 28% of girls. Which certainly holds true to my experience.
Yeah.
And that, if you look at, like, they ask them also, like, how often do you talk while gaming, right? Mm-hmm. And it's, like, roughly 60% of boys talk at least every few days, as opposed to 14% of girls talk every few days or more.
Yeah.
So, and one more statistic with girls, and then I'm done. Here's the headline of this bar graph that I'm looking at. Gaming girls feel less connected than gaming boys to other people when playing online. So if you compare the percent that are more relaxed and happy when they play, that's 86% of boys, 72% of girls. More connected to friends you play games with you already know is 84% of boys, 62% of girls.
I want you to stick the adjective gaming in front of all of these, because that's really funny to me for some reason.
Gaming boys, gaming
girls? The
gaming
boys and the gaming girls.
To be fair, 33% of boys feel more angry, gaming boys feel more angry and frustrated when they play, compared to only 20% of gaming girls. Mm-hmm. But still, you see this big gap in, are they feeling happy and are they feeling connected when they play?
Yeah. I mean, by, opening themselves up more, it kind of makes sense that boys would have stronger feelings in both directions, right? You would be able to find more positive and more negative experiences.
I mean, I think the angry and frustrated thing comes from more of the toxic masculinity side, but that's also a possibility.
Sure, I just mean the more you use voice chat, right, the more people you meet, and therefore the more good and bad experiences you have.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, just the standard boy. The standard gaming boy, not the gamer boy, okay? Whereas, like, when you're playing just with your own friends, like, then it's just, like, a sort of standard thing, I guess.
No, and that makes sense. That being engaged in voice chat gives way to stronger emotions. So it's no secret why girls try to hide their identity, right? Being a girl in an online space, or being a parent as a girl in an online space, opens you up to harassment of all kinds, in ways that gaming boys don't often experience. But I did want to talk a little bit, and this is a big question, so feel free to say, Madelyn, this is too big a question, we can talk about this. But
that'd be super hypocritical of me, I think, but...
Well, whatever. But how do you think these kinds of online spaces can start to close that connection gap? And how can they encourage communication that makes gaming girls feel safe and welcome?
I mean, I think it's unfortunately all on the company that's running that game. You have to have good community support. And I think that varies depending on the game. Like, if you have a positive community, then that's a positive community for everybody. Right? Whereas, if you say you have a positive community for boys, then you actually have a negative community. So, I mean, it just generally, and I think the bigger question, and the one that I have no answer to, is how do you incentivize these companies to bring better community support to their games, and crack down more on harassment and toxicity and just bad sportsmanship. And I don't know how you incentivize them to do that, but it unfortunately all comes down to, like, the quality of moderation.
Well, do you think a lot of that, boils down to the impression that these games are for boys, like that boys are the player base of this game, and even if it would be worthwhile to moderate better and make it a safer space for girls, that it's not worth the money invested into a smaller customer base? This is not me saying that women are actually a smaller customer base. I don't know the numbers, but that does feel like the stereotype.
Well, yeah, that's the stereotype from, like, since gaming began.
Fair.
In a lot of
Yes.
ways. I mean, I think it just depends on the game. It's not like there's one, like, online gaming sphere that you can just change.
Of course.
Right? Like, you only have control over the game that you are presenting. So, I don't know. I mean, I think there are games that do try to appeal to, at least in their marketing and presentation, Overwatch, to people who are not white males. Do they do a great job of it? No. Is Overwatch still pretty toxic? Yes. So, like, even as they're trying to appeal aesthetically to people outside the standard group that you would expect, like, they're not following through with it necessarily in community support.
So I have very little experience with voice chat because I'm aware of what a toxic place
it
is.
I have never used voice chat with strangers.
So we've accidentally, when Clickbait Boyfriend is playing Apex Legend, he always mutes the chat because, like, he just has no interest. But it's just like you have to press the triangle button to mute and unmute. And every once in a while he forgets or he accidentally double presses it or whatever. And man, it's not, like, nice.
Yeah.
Not that we've gotten any, like, I've heard anything that's, like, super, super terrible even, but it's just, like, even if you were to take out the possibility of, like, actual harassment, I still would not opt into voice chat because people are weird and yelly and angry.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
And that, I feel like, is maybe more of a difficult problem, or maybe not even a problem to fix.
Although then again, like, and you can say, yes, it is worse. But, like, is it worse than, like, when you're doing a team building exercise that requires speed?
Well, in those situations, though, those people have an incentive to not full-on scream at you. And, like, you personally. So. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a team-building exercise, you have some relationship of some kind. / you at least have to look the person in the eye after the exercise is over.
Yeah. I've been to some team-building retreats out of, obligation. And, like, when you have to do something fast that requires a lot of thinking, it does get sort of loud, at least, right?
No, absolutely. I just think the kind of loud that it gets in games is different.
Sure.
Probably because of the difference between in-person and online communication. These people don't have to talk to you again.
Yeah.
Or even just, like, the expectation even if they're not yelling at you, it's annoying to just have someone random being like, ah, ah, like, come on, F, 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 like, whatever. Like, things that, the kind of yelling at yourself that's really normal to do in games, but that is really not normal to do in any other in-person team-based activity. Other than, like, Jenga. I guess.
You're right, Jenga's pretty toxic.
The Jenga community really needs to nip that in the bud.
No, but even that, I think it all unfortunately comes down to good moderation. Like having community expectations, following through on punishments when those expectations are violated. Like, when you're starting a community at the beginning, like, you have to be really rigid, right? Like, you get the people who are causing problems out as quickly as possible so that everybody knows not to do that, or else they will be evicted, right? Like, it sounds harsh, but, like, you know, you say you do something that's wrong once, then if you allow it, then the community learns, oh, that's fine then, right? And that applies on a small scale of, like, a single game, and it also applies on a large scale, right? Of just society. We live in a society.
Oh, man. Well, I'll turn it to a lighter note now, because we could talk a whole podcast about being a woman in games of all kinds and what that means. Mm-hmm. But most of all, I really wanted to talk about in the show that gaming is a really good means of social connection, even if it's an imperfect one. During these times when, you know, your choices between endless Zoom happy hours and playing games with your friends, I would encourage you to try out playing some games with your friends.
Yeah.
I realize I'm advocating for what the UCLA study from the 80s would call some kind of masculine form of friendship here, wherein you do things together. But that is my form of friendship, I guess, and I'm gonna advocate for it.
Well, yesterday I'm pretty sure they announced yesterday because I saw all the articles
on the World Health Organization.
Yes. WHO announced their #PlayApartTogether campaign, where they're actually teaming up with people like Blizzard and Zynga. That's the mobile one, yeah. I think. To encourage people to play more online games during this time. Probably because of the stuff you were talking about in terms of, like, loneliness being a problem and social isolation and the bad health effects. Which is a little funny, though, because they just diagnosed gaming addiction as a disorder, like, a couple years ago. But,
you can only play the exact right amount of games
yes.
online. No more. In the same way as you shouldn't eat a whole bottle of vitamins. Same idea.
Yeah, but basically they're just teaming up with game companies to make, like, more events and ways to bring people into the community and stuff. To try to encourage people to hang out together more, I guess.
Well, I hope it succeeds. I, for one, would love to have more people in my life that I can talk about games with.
Well, just on games, period, like, there's already been a giant, well, not giant, but a decent uptick in people playing games since stay-at-home orders and stuff started going into effect. Like, Xbox and Nintendo stores have been having some crashes because they're overloaded. Verizon said that there was, like, a 75% increase in gaming during peak hours, like, the week after California's stay-at-home order went in effect. Tencent saw, like, millions of players going into their mobile games when quarantines went in effect in China. And even, like, watching games, Twitch and YouTube saw 10 to 15% increases in people watching people playing games.
That said, don't let the media scare you into thinking that you should be playing fewer games to, like, save internet.
Yeah, that's
Netflix
BS.
is still using, like, 15% of the world's total bandwidth. So you're good. Like, you don't let anyone, like, give you the gaming spooks of, like, ooh, gaming's gonna break the internet. It's not. It's everybody rewatching The Office. Like, calm down.
Is The Office still on Netflix? Is
Friends
it gonna go
is not.
away?
The Office goes away at the end of next year.
Okay, hopefully we'll be through this by then. Otherwise, I don't think
God
we'll
knows
make it.
what will happen if they take The Office away during this time. God only knows. I'm not watching it, to be clear. I kind of burned myself out on Office rewatches, to be honest, for a while. But
I've never really had much interest in rewatching The Office. Not, like, consciously. Like, in the same way as Friends. Like, I watched Friends when it came on when we had TV. But I wasn't gonna, like, go on Netflix and, like, rewatch my favorite episodes, you know? I'm not gonna do that with The Office either.
yet, now it's in your head, you'll find yourself watching it without even realizing it. 4 a.m, awake.
I'll just black out and then come awake and it'll be on, like, season 4 of The Office.
Exactly.
Somehow. Yeah, that seems likely.
No, I hope it leads to more people playing games. I hope it leads to me, not even just more people playing games, because I feel like a lot of people do play games. I really hope it leads to more of me talking to people about playing games. Because I know they do, and they just aren't talking about it. I hope it leads to me being able to give more people gifts in games. My true passion.
You did dump, like, 10 gifts on me when you visited my Animal Crossing island.
I wanted to pay, like, my dues for taking your apples.
You took, like, 3 apples total.
6.
Oh,
I didn't
well,
want to
then
take all
that's
of
different.
them. Maybe you wanted some.
I have a whole apple grove growing at the top of the mountain, so...
Next time we have to download the apps so we can actually talk to each other, as opposed to me trying to type 4 words in less than 5 minutes.
You can use, if you had it handheld, you can use the touchscreen. It's a lot faster.
Well, I did have it handheld for a while and didn't realize I could do that.
Yeah, but because that's what I was doing. I was using the touchscreen, which is why I was typing so much faster than you.
Dang. Roasted.
Hot tips.
Like, appreciated that there was no voice chat, so your neighbors couldn't talk to me.
I think they have like a really terrible Nintendo Switch Online app that might have voice
That's
chat.
what I was talking about.
It.
So that app lets you, like, text your messages.
Yeah.
And it comes up on the screen.
But then you have to, like, put your controller down, though.
I guess that's true.
I don't know.
See, we're still working it out. How to connect, everybody. How to connect.
Indeed.
But I really liked visiting your island. It sold me on games and social connection. Although I kept trying to say things to you out loud. And you couldn't hear them.
Oh, no.
I was like, haha, what a funny little setup. And I was like, oh.
You just had to use your few emotes to express joy.
Well, I hope the politicians are listening, because if Square Enix can institute a rent freeze in Final
Yeah.
Fantasy XIV, surely they can too.
That's so funny to me, like, in a good way, though. Like, it's basically like, if you don't pay your rent within a certain time, it used to have, like, an auto-demolish thing. So they just turned off the auto-demolish feature. So even if you don't pay your rent, your home won't get torn down.
Well, politicians,
Which is all we
please
want,
turn
really.
off the auto-demolish feature. We'd appreciate it.
I have been tempted a few times, like, maybe I should start Final Fantasy XIV, but it's still too intimidating, I think.
Maybe you should watch Dad of Light first.
Maybe. It's just like, where do you start? How do you... What
There
are the...
are probably a lot of beginners right now.
I know. It's just... It's all... The world of online gaming is especially online RPGs, more pigs, as I call them, are
More pigs.
rather mysterious to me.
Well, bring on more pigs for us all, people.
More pigs.
Maybe this will be the period where I finally make online friends. I mean, to be honest, like, my friends from college are probably mostly online friends at this point, so that's fine. But folks, how are you dealing with gaming in isolation? Do you find that gaming with friends far away is bringing you closer, driving you farther apart, just making you miss in-person social interaction, or making you realize you never want to have in-person social interaction again? Let us know. You should message us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast. And we're on YouTube, although you probably shouldn't message us there, at Talk This Sisters. I can't imagine that I'm checking the messages on YouTube, but you can try.
I'll probably get to it in like 2 months when I finally finish the video that I'm working on.
You should also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can, like, on Zoom with your friends, read about the show, see what's in the hat, and check out our blog, featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, Split Screen, which is the ultimate in social distance entertainment, and various other blogs coming soon. Animal Crossing blog coming very soon.
Yes.
And then also, you should subscribe to the show. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify. I almost said LinkedIn for some reason.
We're on LinkedIn.
I don't know where that came from, but...
Connect with us on LinkedIn.
We're on Pandora. We're on Overcast. We're on Pocket Cast. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This.
Can you find podcasts on LinkedIn? Let us know, because we'll put it there.
Have you found us on LinkedIn?
Do you listen to podcasts through LinkedIn?
If so, please call us about games and social connection, because we're interested in you. Next week, we're talking about a couple games.
We're talking about Minecraft and Code Vein.
Thanks, Emma.
I'm like 85% sure on Minecraft, but 100% on Code Vein.
I'm 100% on Minecraft, so that works out. So
I'm pretty sure there's a free Code Vein demo, by the way.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm worried that if I get Minecraft, Clickbait Boyfriend might never recover.
I know you have played Minecraft before.
I have played Minecraft.
If you want to have
He played
both
Minecraft
of them.
in, like, beta. So that's...
Wow, you're so old.
That's a danger to bring into this home. So tune in next week for that. And in the meantime, you know, connect with your friends over games. Or, hey, connect with your friends over Talk This Podcast. Start a listening club. Wouldn't that be fun?
Super, super fun.
So, that's it for this week's side quest. Emma, any ideas for yours yet? I know it's 2 weeks early.
Don't ask me till next week. Come on now.
I was just wondering if you had anything burning in your mind that you wanted to talk about.
Not in this instant.
Well, we'll keep in touch about that. Listeners, do you want to sign off? I can do the sign off.
You can sign off. You're the discussion leader, Madelyn.
Listeners, I hope this week you find yourself in the role of both discussion leader and discussion follower.